You should have a handout now in front of you. This is the information that I'm going to be talking about this morning. It's about 8 or 9 pages, but as you'll see, there's only 3 slides on each page. There's a space on the right-hand side for notes if you'd like to take any notes. We have tons of other information, obviously, for you with all these instructors here and so much knowledge. There's information on the tables in the back of the room that certainly we can use, and with the internet nowadays, it's just about unlimited as to what we can do. So, you know, I know it's really hard for everybody to concentrate right now with the situation that's going on in our country. If that's the case and you need to take a little rest or a nap or whatever, I certainly won't be offended. I would say that what we're trying to do is get the appropriate information in everybody's hand here today, and I know most of these guys personally. I know they'd be glad to help you at any time. So link up with them, get their names. We'll provide you with some lists. I think you've already got a list of course attendees. You don't have one because I just stole yours. But anyway, the people are on here. I think all the information's there. So with that, we'll get going. My name is Bob McQuiston. I'm the Division Pavement Engineer with the Federal Highway Administration. I've been with FHWA for 23 years now, the last 9 or so in the state of Ohio. I started my career in our Wyoming division in Cheyenne, was out there for a little while, worked in our Arkansas office for about a year, moved to, what came next? Virginia, and worked in hydraulics for a little bit, went to West Virginia, worked as what we call an area engineer, as a generalist type position, then back to Washington, D.C., worked in safety and pavements, and I've been in Ohio for the last 9 years, so we've finally been able to sit down a little bit, settle down. Okay, with that, we'll get on with the show here, and what I'm going to try to do is just give a very broad overview of a lot of the concepts and more of the philosophy of what we're going to be talking about over the next 2 days. And the title of the presentation is The Case for Preventive Maintenance. At the national level, our Office of Program Development made a pretty strong statement a couple years ago. And they said, as we move into the 21st century, it is clear that the Federal Aid Highway Program is undergoing a significant transition from its original focus on new construction to that of preservation of the highway system. And that's what we really want to talk about and emphasize here today. Preventive maintenance is an awful big part of that, and I'm sure either Eric gave you the definitions of preventive maintenance, or we will give you some that have been approved through the National Task Force. Okay, the AASHTO Standing Committee on Highways, who works nationwide, defines preventive maintenance as the planned strategy of cost-effective treatments to an existing roadway system and its appurtenances that preserves the system, retards future deterioration, and maintains or improves the functional condition of the system. And the essence of that is, you guys were asking Eric questions about heavy loads, load-related distress. Preventive type treatments are not going to do anything for you to address that kind of problem. If you have heavy overloads, you have fatigue in your pavements, you need to do something other than these preventive treatments. You're either going to have to reconstruct them or rehabilitate them. And again, we can't go into all the information there, but there's plenty that we've got for you on the back table here, and we'd be glad to share that with you at any time. Okay, let's take just a quick look at the legislation to get us to where we are today. And the Federal Aid Highway Program's been around a long time. You know, once upon a time, the whole purpose of the Bureau of Public Roads, which is the predecessor agency for federal highways, was to get the farmer out of the mud. Since then, legislation is reenacted every 4 to 6 years, depending on how long each highway bill lasts. But in reality, what we were trying to do is that one of the previous slides showed, was that our goal was to construct the system. We wanted to get the system constructed, and philosophically, once we did that at the national level, the program would be turned over to the state and local agencies. Well, in the middle 70s or so, we started to realize that we're not going to make it. We've got the system about 50% complete. We're starting to get fatigue-related distress deterioration. It's handling a lot more traffic. So at that point in time, the law was changed, and it allowed resurfacing, restoration, and reconstruction. Okay, so as time's gone on, we've changed the program to try to meet the needs. And that kind of brings us up to where we are in the last 10 years here now. And the first one that I'd like to talk about is the 1991 Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act, or ICE-T. And that was really the first bill to allow federal funds for preventive maintenance activities. Before that time, you folks in the local agencies and all the state highway agencies had to fund the maintenance activities. We said, we want to put the money towards the construction of the big picture, the interstate system, and then as the time went on, reconstruction and rehabilitation. And as we've gotten closer to completing the system, of course, we're maybe 99% finished now, at least the interstate system. The laws have changed as we've gone on. So preventive maintenance is available using federal aid funds, which should be a big help to everybody. Now, that 1991 ICE-T legislation did come with some restrictions. And the first one said that you can use this money for maintenance with the understanding that you can demonstrate that these treatments are a cost-effective means of extending pavement life. And how do you guys think you would do that? Anybody have any ideas? That's kind of how it went. Everybody said, well, how are we going to do this? We don't have the data to back this up. We don't have information. We haven't collected it over time. We don't have the historic pavement condition ratings. We don't have our truck traffic and loading. It's really hard to do this. So why don't we just keep our federal funds? We'll keep them in the big pot, use them for the reconstruction and rehabilitation, and we'll just continue to do our own maintenance, because that's a lot more work, but a lot less dollars too. We also said the projects must address safety deficiencies. And what happens when you have to do that? It's going to probably change the scope of your project, because if you get into a situation where you've got to revise geometrics, you've got to install signs and guardrails, you've got to flatten slopes, before long, the cost of the safety elements are far in excess of a thin overlay or a slurry seal or chip seal or a lot of these other preventive activities that the folks are going to be talking about here the next couple days. So the result of that was that preventive maintenance had really not become a widespread practice. Now in 1997, which is our most recent and current act, the T of 21, the Transportation Efficiency Act for the 21st century, started removing some of the barriers. The benefits were we had greater flexibility to address safety. For example, we've told the state highway agencies, use the preventive maintenance for the pavements that you want to address and go out and address those deficiencies. But at the same time, we expect you to develop a program to address safety. We're not going to really allow you to just go out there and chip seal your roads all over the place and never address safety. We want to address the problems at both ends. There were more funding with fewer strings attached. So we're trying to simplify the process for everybody so that there's more dollars available for the state and local agencies to address the needs directly. And the federal aid funding was increased to 80%. So in your situation, you could use federal aid funds at a rate of 80%, and somehow, however the local agency decides, you have to come back and get that other 20%, whether it comes out of your pocket or you have other mechanisms to be able to fund that 20%. We don't really care where it comes from. But in order to get the preventive maintenance funds, the big portion, the 80%, you have to be able to match the other part. And the bottom line right now is the system's pretty much complete, our priorities are changed, and Federal Highway is encouraging preventive maintenance programs at the state and local highway agency level. Okay, so what is this pavement preventive maintenance that we're talking about? One definition is work performed on a structurally sound pavement, generally in the form of a surface treatment, intended to preserve the pavement, retard future deterioration, and maintain or improve the functional condition without substantially increasing the structural capacity. Anybody ever heard anything like that? Does anyone know where that definition came from? Where's Eric? Is he in here? You knew where it came from, didn't you? You wrote that. Eric wrote that, okay? So that's in the ODOT pavement policy. Goes to show you not all of us could remember everything we ever did, and it's pretty tough. Now, some of these definitions are pretty long and drawn out. So what are we trying to get at? Let's try to make this as simple as we can. The philosophy of pavement preventive maintenance, applying the right treatment to the right pavement at the right time. Now, that's the other extreme. That's really simple. You know, we went from pretty complicated trying to figure out the definition to the philosophy here. How do we do that? Well, that's going to take some study and some information. And we have the mechanisms now to collect that information, to store it in our computers, to process it, to use it. As time goes on, we want to build on it. But certainly there are some questions that are a little bit more difficult. And this is about where we are now. We know the answers to some of these. A lot of these we need all of you guys from your end to tell us back how some of these treatments are performing on your roads. If we don't all work together on this, we can't answer all these questions. None of us know the answer to all these things. Okay, first question. Which series of treatments is most appropriate for each pavement section on the network? Does anybody feel like they have the answer for that? Let's take Interstate 70. We built it out of, back in 1959, let's say, one section. It was a concrete pavement. What would have been the best way to get to where we are today? So 59 to now, that's what, 42 years or so. How could we most cost effectively have used our funds between 1959 when we first built it and today? Those are the kind of questions that we're after here. That's kind of a tough one there. When is the optimal time to apply those treatments? Does anybody have any procedures or process to determine when you're going to fix your roads? Obviously, everybody has that. You're out there doing it. What do you base it on? Budget. Absolutely. Budget is, driving a lot of the decision-making process. What happens when you have a year with zero budget, let's say? What do you have to do? You got to defer it all, right? You don't have any budget, so we got to defer it. So the budget's critical. Now, we all have some budget. The question is, how are we going to use that to our best ability? For each individual treatment, let's say, how long is pavement surface life extended? If you guys do a chip seal, how long does it last? Anybody have any guesses? Or 5 or 6 years. Is it always 5 or 6 years? Why not?
Weather, traffic conditions, product that you use.
Construction specifications, materials, design, condition of the subgrade, condition of the base. That entire pavement is going to determine how that top treatment, very good, that is really good. Those are some of the reasons. But the thing is, there's so many reasons it makes it very difficult. So what we have to do is try to figure out how we're best going to extend the service life at the least cost over a long period of time. Are the treatments cost effective? If you're out there and you're overlaying your roads, your program is, well, 2 inches works every time. Is that the most cost-effective treatment that you have? What are you guys doing with your maintenance program? What's typical? Sorry? Overlays or chip seals or just grind the pavement up and return it to dirt so that we don't have to keep paving it? Or, you know, there's lots of options here. If we don't have any budget, well, let's just bring the horses back, for gosh sakes. Really, we can't do that. So we got to start learning which treatments are the most cost effective. What's the overall impact on the traveling public? Boy, we hear this one a lot. Every time I tell anybody that I've just met that I'm a highway engineer and I work in pavements, you know what their response is? Well, you're the guy that's putting all the orange barrels out there. So for this one, this is a biggie. What's the overall impact? Now, some of the benefits of preventive maintenance, we can address some of those things. And we'll get to that in just a minute. Basically, though, our research shows that if we measure the condition of our pavements over some period of time, or some traffic loading, whatever data you have, the easiest is probably going to be time at the local agency level, because we can all go back in time. It's pretty hard to measure traffic. And we say down here on the bottom of the vertical axis is a failed condition. Up here is the excellent. Maybe that's where you originally built the pavement, if it was really excellent construction, where it started out. Well, as time goes on, that pavement deteriorates. And it comes down here to some place where you say, we got to do something here. We don't have that big of a budget. We don't have that many dollars. So what are we going to do down here? Our roads are falling apart. We got to do something. And if you wait until it goes down in here, then what starts happening? Sorry? It's time to replace it. And then what happens? You're spending all the big bucks on this one pavement, and you have pavements all over your network that need money to keep them fixed. So what's the solution to that? Well, what we've learned from our research and experience over the years is that if we come in here at some particular point in time and spend $1, that'll save us 4 or 5 years down here. Now look how much time basically has gone by. Maybe that's 70% of the life of the pavement. It's still in real good condition up here. So why are we just waiting this little bit of time to come down here, wait till it failed, where we got to reconstruct it? Let's see what we can do to get up in here and spend the $1 and save the $4 or $5 later. So that's what we're trying to do. That's one of the benefits. What have we done traditionally with our pavements? We've gone down there like that last slide showed. We wait and let that pavement deteriorate from an excellent condition all the way down to, remember, this was failed or bad condition or whatever you want to call it down here, and we come in and we do what we usually call reactive maintenance or routine maintenance or whatever you call it in your agency. Okay, so we're trying to spend, and how much budget do we have to do this? Do you have an infinite budget where you can just come in here and spend it there and do this all the time and keep going on? We all have limited budgets, so you're probably going to come in here and do some pothole repairs, throw a little cold mix in there, try to get you through the winter until we can go back and put some hot mix in there in the summer. We're reacting to the problem on individual situations because we have to, because what happens? You come down here again, the pavement's failed, you either have to rebuild it or you're going to catch a lot of crap from the public because they don't want their roads to be in bad condition. Okay, so reactive maintenance, that's what's happening, and that's been typical the way most agencies have acted over time. We come in and we do the reactive maintenance at some point in time. And then what happens? We don't have enough budget. Our budget's cut, we don't have enough money. So at this point in time, we did a little reactive maintenance because we knew when we got out here, we're just going to rebuild it and make it a brand new pavement. Well, we still don't have the budget. So let's just patch it up again and get it through until we can get some budget. Okay, so we finally got the budget, but now we're out here. What are we going to do? We got to reconstruct it. The plans aren't ready. So what are we going to do? We're going to keep maintaining it till the plans are ready. Now we got the money, the plans aren't ready. So now we've done 3 of these guys in here, spent a whole bunch of money, or maybe not a whole bunch, but we have spent some money to maintain our pavement. And at this point in time, where is it? It's back over here where it's in poor condition or failed or whatever you guys call that point on your curve. And over time, that pavement deteriorated, and we're fighting like heck to keep it at the best level we can with the budget that we have. But that puts us down here. It's not in real good condition. So finally, we get some budget, and we come in here and we reconstruct the pavement. And of course, that costs some money. When we reconstruct, that costs us a lot of money to restore that particular pavement. We're back up here to our excellent condition, probably somewhere around here where we started out at this point in time now. And we're back to kind of where we started. So now what are we going to do with the next round? Just get back into this mode and let it deteriorate and do all this? Or are there other options? Well, let's try to take a look at some of the alternatives. And that's what we call the preventive maintenance concept. We're looking again at pavement condition and traffic or time. And what we want to do is come in here and do these preventive maintenance treatments. Now, at the point that most people are right now, we're looking at doing one treatment. We say, all right, we get to this point in time. Didn't that research show that if we come in here, we can spend $1 here and save 4 or 5 over here, or whatever it costs you as your local agency? Maybe it only costs you $2. Maybe it costs you $10. But if you don't have the data to show where you're spending the money, how do you really know where you are on that point in the curve? So let's come in here at some point, do a little low-cost preventive treatment. Now, it's not going to perform like this one, because this was our new pavement. It's going to deteriorate approximately at the slope of that line. Okay? But it was a pretty low-cost treatment. Okay, so a couple, 3 years go by, 5, 6 years for your chip seal. It's shot. Let's come in here and do another preventive treatment. Is it a chip seal? I don't know. Might be a thin overlay this time. Might be another chip seal. What works best on your highway network based on your information and your experience? So that's the preventive maintenance concept. And as we go on over time, the overall condition just went from here, and instead of coming way down here where everybody's unhappy because it's in bad shape, we've been able to keep it up here. Okay? Basically. Okay? That's the theory and the concept. Does it actually work like that? Well, heck no. But how often can we go out and measure the condition of the pavement? But that's what we're trying to do. Spend as few dollars as possible and keep the pavement in the best condition that we can over the life of the pavement. Okay, so the importance of preventive maintenance is, first, our focus is no longer on new construction, but on preserving the existing system. Second, preventive maintenance plays an essential role in this preservation. Can we just do preventive maintenance? Well, heck no. Some of our pavements need to be reconstructed right now, or they need structural overlays. They're all in different condition. We have concrete pavements. We have asphalt pavements. You might have oil-treated roads. You might have some dirt roads now, or just gravel roads, whatever your situation is. You've got concrete pavements that have been overlaid with asphalt pavements that have been overlaid with asphalt or concrete, and on and on and on. So we have to figure out what's the best way to do all this. But the bottom line is, number 3, we can't afford to keep doing the things the same way that we have in the past. We really need to make some changes to make better use of our limited budgets. Okay, so now when's the best time to do these treatments? You guys have any idea? We just kind of talked about that point on the curve. Somewhere out here, where's this magic point? What is it in your agencies? Like if you're doing a chip seal, how do you determine when you do a chip seal? What condition is the pavement in? Anybody have any? Were you just scratching or stretching?
Well, we usually go out and
Okay.
every mile of the roads,
Okay.
and patch, crack seal, and patch, you know, potholes and major cracks.
Okay.
And I guess, I work with Dean here, you know, we work together, and if we make the determination that there's so many cracks, and it's getting to the point where we're not moving through very fast, and I know that's not real scientific, but it works. I mean, if it's to the point where you've just got crack after crack after crack, it's obviously time you've got a surface treat, well, we call it the chip seal. And
Okay.
that's probably our most used method of preventive maintenance.
And you said a lot of good things there. I hope everybody heard that. That's which agency are you with?
We're with Bloom and Prairie Township in Wood County.
Okay. Anybody else with any of the townships or counties? Well, it really doesn't matter, because no matter who you are or what you're doing or who your agency is, it's going to be different for all of you. You all have different budgets. You all have different roads. They were built with different materials at different times on different soils. So we all have to do what's best. If that experience is showing you that's the best way to go, that's the best way to go. That's what you know, and that's your program right now. If the road has too many potholes and too many cracks in it, why go out there and crack seal it? We've got to do something more major, like a rehabilitation. Come in and fill the potholes and do a structural overlay, let's say. But we have to figure out what the cause of the problem is. Okay, so let's try to take our philosophy here now and say, well, we don't know where the heck the perfect time is to do these pavements. They're all different. So why don't we say that point that we saw before, A, we know it's somewhere out here. We don't know exactly where, but it's somewhere out there. So let's just say it's between A and B. And maybe you call this 100 up here excellent and this poor or failed or whatever. You all have different measures for what you're doing. And then ODOT uses PCR, their pavement condition rating. Some folks use ride quality. You measure the ride. If the road gets rough, that's going to trigger at some point. You know, the old way is down here. It's real rough. It's falling apart, so we're going to rebuild it. Well, why don't we do something when it's rough out in this range? That's what we're trying to do here. And again, it's different for every pavement because they're all built differently. So we established a target range to come in and try to start doing these preventive maintenance treatments to keep our condition up at a higher level of serviceability. And again, like we saw before, that changes this yellow curve to a combination of the yellow and the dashed white out here. Basically, we don't know exactly where it is, but if I was driving on a road, I'd sure rather over the period of time that I'm driving on it, drive on that than have to deal with this. It'd be nice if we could stay up here and keep our roads in good condition. So that's what we're trying to do. Okay, so those are the preventive maintenance treatments. Again, what we did with ODOT, we worked together on something. ODOT has a very formalized process. They go out, do a distress survey on their pavements every year, and they've been doing this since 1985. So they have 16, maybe 17 years of data now that they know what the condition was at least once a year, if not more often. About once a year, they know what condition each one of those sections of pavements was in. Of course, they got 19,000 miles of pavements to maintain, so how do you keep track of all this stuff? Well, somehow we got to break them down and analyze each individual pavement. So where ODOT says a 40 PCR approximately, that's poor, failed, whatever you want to call it. Somewhere near 100 up there is when we originally built it. Well, we said, we don't know what this preventive range is. It's different for every pavement. So why don't we just say somewhere between 70 and 90? Instead of waiting until it got to 40 and spending the big bucks, let's see if we can do something up in here. So that's kind of what we're trying to do now. We're trying to hit those treatments in this target range. And again, put the preventive treatments in there. All right, what's the key here to do all this? Most people are not going to have 16, 17 years of data and the analysis capability that state highway agencies have. And in the state highway agencies around the country, there's 50 of them. They all have a different process and procedure. They're all at a different point. And it really doesn't matter. It's going to be what works for you. How much manpower do you have, if you have any left at all anymore? Are you going to contract these things out, or how are you going to address this thing? Well, let's again step back and try to make this really simple. What do we need to do? At the state level, California did a study, and after they had data like ODOT did, and they said, what we want to do, our goal is to reduce pavements in need of rehabilitation from 29% to 11% in 10 years. Okay? So they're trying to get all those problem pavements that need rehabilitation and reduce that number to 11%. They can't get rid of all of them. You never can, really. It's a very difficult thing to do unless you've got an unlimited budget and you just go out and rebuild it every couple years. Certainly nobody can do that. Wisconsin said, well, what we want to do is provide the highest quality service possible per unit of service with the budget that we've got. Well, that's kind of like mom and apple pie. We'd all like to do that. That's pretty simple and effective. Then we have the guys up north there. And what they said was, let's keep good roads good. Try to keep them in good condition. This is what we're going to try to do. They started a big program for preventive maintenance in 1991. Well, in 1997, they said, all right, what kind of goal are we going to move to? They said, all right, by 2007, that's 10 years, what we want to do is get 95% of our expressways in fair to good condition, up high on the curve, and 85% of our expressways in fair and good condition. And as you work down the functional order, the functional classification of the highway system, maybe they would say, all right, our collector roads are down here. Let's try to keep 75% of them in good to fair condition. But they haven't gotten that far yet, okay? Again, we're trying to address the entire network. But what did they do? They started with the most important, the highest order routes that you have on your highway system, and then they work their way down to the second most important and however far down you need to go. So that's what those guys did. And what they've found now by studying their 10 years, they have 10 years of experience since they started in 1991, where they used to spend, their budget in that state was $315 million a year, approximately. And they used to spend it all on rehab and reconstruction. Didn't worry too much about maintenance. Didn't really keep track of it because they just filled the potholes and sealed the cracks, whatever we needed to do. Well, in that 10 years, they've taken that $315 million program and they've cut it down by, how much is that? It looks like about, what, 125 million or so? And they started up with a $10 million preventive maintenance program. So basically what they did was, they have the same condition of their pavements. They spent $115 million a year less. So they saved a little money doing that. Maybe they can build another bridge somewhere now or reconstruct a section. So they saved a little money doing that. That $10 million, by the way, now, what they did with their program was they grew that over time. I think they started with $6 million in 1991, went to $10 million. Of course, a lot of this depends on your budget and how you're legislated and funded, but they grew the program, and right now they're up to the $60 million level. Okay, so $60 million on preventive maintenance. How come? Because they're finding that this is so cost effective. If you have a strong program here, you save more money down the bottom. That's your bottom line. Now, we have some limitations, and I know all of you face a lot of these. And the perceptions in most of the agencies are, well, the public says, why are you fixing our good roads? You don't need to fix that road over there. You need to fix the road that I use over here, because it's in much worse condition. And that's legitimate, okay? Agencies are more likely to receive complaints about the specific defects in the overall network. You know, we got potholes that need to be patched. The public isn't looking at your whole system, your whole 2,000 miles or 200 miles or 10 miles, however much you have on your system, 19,000 miles for Ohio DOT, 80-some thousand miles if you're in North Carolina DOT. They're all different. But nobody can keep track of all that. You just want the road that you use to be in good condition. But as the owner agency, we have to look at the whole network. So what we need to do, all of us together, is educate the public about this new philosophy and what we're trying to do. If we're chip sealing a road, we're trying to do something different than ODOT's doing, where they're reconstructing I-71 and putting a massive structural section in there to handle the traffic loads that they have to deal with. Do you have the traffic loads that ODOT has on 71? Well, I hope not, or maybe you do. But that's for everybody to figure out. Okay, so let's take a quick look at what a couple states did. Washington State went out and surveyed their populace. And what they said was, all right, what we're going to do is roadway surface maintenance is going to be the highest priority maintenance activity. And in your situation, it may or may not be. Snow and ice removal sure as heck is an important one. You got to do that, all right? So you got to decide for yourself how you're going to prioritize your maintenance funds. They also found by surveying the public that the public is willing to pay more. Everybody thinks that we got to cut taxes, cut taxes, cut taxes, and we all want taxes cut. But the public really is willing to pay more to reduce future costs by getting a higher level of condition right now. They've said they're willing to do that. How about in Ohio? What do you think some of the priorities in the, when ODOT did a survey and they said, all right, people of Ohio, what's the most important thing to you when you go out and drive on our roads? What do you want us to do for you? What do you think? Did they? Sorry?
Snow and ice removal.
Snow and ice removal. That's a good one. That's important. That's a biggie. Anybody else? How about litter pickup? Pothole patching, bridges, signs, guardrails. What rates up there? Pavements. How about safety, overall safety? Well, here's what the public says. We want you guys to eliminate traffic delay. You got 19,000 miles to work on, but we don't want to be hindered. Get out of our way and get the road open. Have any of you ever heard anything like this? A little bit, huh? Yeah, that's a biggie. Pavement ride quality. They want smooth pavements because that's how they're judging how we as the pavement engineers that are trying to do this are doing our job. If you got a lousy riding road, they're going to say, you guys are doing a lousy job. My road stinks. Safety. Everybody's got safety. In every state that's done some kind of survey, and the surveys we've done at the national level, safety's always going to be in there. And visibility and delineation came in there. And the whole list goes on. Snow and ice is in there. I can't remember where it is. But these basically are what the folks told us that they want us to do. Well, when we did this kind of a survey at the national level, all around the country, it came out pretty similar to this. But the number one that we found nationally was this one, pavement ride quality. They judge how a highway agency maintains its network by how smooth their roads are. Everybody wants smooth roads. If I remember right, safety was a close second along with traffic delay. So these three guys they're always in there near the top. But of course, what's safety mean? Snow and ice control is a big part of safety. If we don't do anything about snow and ice, we're going to probably have some accidents out there. So, okay, those are kind of how it came out when ODOT did their survey. All right, what are the benefits of preventive maintenance? We've taken a look at a lot of things now. But if we develop a program and follow it over a long period of time, we think we can make some improvements. first one, higher customer satisfaction. Maybe we can give them a little better ride quality. They want our pavements to ride better, so they'll be a little more satisfied. If we can move that level of ride quality condition, however you measure it up, that'll be good. Improve pavement condition, safer roads, lower life cycle costs. How about you guys, when you go in and analyze a particular section that you're going to rebuild, how do you do your life cycle cost? Does anybody in here do a life cycle cost? You guys aren't doing life cycle cost. How do you know that you're spending your money in the best way? ODOT does life cycle costs. They do it on all their major projects. Do you have the ability or the capacity or the time to do that kind of thing? Probably not. So it's okay, but ultimately with this preventive maintenance component, we're going to be able to lower those life cycle costs, whatever they are. We're going to reduce congestion. One of the reasons is that, again, let's take the state highway system. You see a lot of times what we're doing now is inlays or mill and fills. When are they done? Well, it depends. If the traffic's low, we'll block a lane on the interstate, put all the traffic in one lane maybe, and mill one lane at a time, resurface it at night, and let them rip. If there's a lot of traffic, what do we have to do then? The stuff that the contractors just love, night work. We say, all right, Mr. Contractor, you're not coming out here all day and working whenever you want. You can only use this section of the facility from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. And then you got to get out because we got traffic that we're trying to get through there. And remember, the public doesn't want to be delayed. From 10 p.m. to 5 a.m., it's okay because we don't have hardly any traffic out there. They can get by using that one lane while a contractor takes the other part to work on. All right, and the bottom line again, more cost-effective use of the funds. That's what we're trying to get to. Higher level of service, less expenditure. This one's kind of self-explanatory. We all maintain our cars and our homes. Why not the roads? What are the keys? Obtain top management support. If the boss doesn't, if you guys go back and say, well, that sounds good, but we're not going to do it, what's going to happen? You're not going to do it. So we got to get the decision makers to understand. Identify a champion. Maybe you guys will be the champion of your program when you go back, but somebody has to push this stuff or it never gets done. Develop guidelines. Eric gave you a copy of the guidelines that ODOT wrote. Monitor condition over time. You may or may not be able to do that. Document the benefits to say, hey, we think we're doing better. We think we're using the money better. And refine our treatments after we gain experience. Maybe we were chip sealing every 5 years. And we're learning that, well, this pavement we can chip seal every 7 years because it'll still be in good service. But this one over here, we have to chip seal it every 3 years. So it depends on the pavement in that individual section. Okay, in summary, got to get away from worst first. Preventive maintenance can extend pavement life and reduce costs. What are the keys to success? We think you got to have some kind of goal. You got to say, we want to keep our network at this level of service. Because if you're way down there, the public's going to complain. If you're way up there, it's going to cost you way too much money. So at what level do you want to maintain your network? Assess and promote the benefits. We got to sell this thing to the traveling public because they're still always going to ask, why are you guys fixing that road over there when we should be over here? So we have to explain to them what we're trying to do. If you have a pavement management system, that really helps you do all this. ODOT has a pavement management system. If you don't, there are people that can help you develop one. Got to get away from the reactive maintenance component. Replace it with the preventive maintenance treatments and we can maintain that higher level of serviceability. I'd be glad to talk to any of you. My phone number's there and my email address. Best way to get me is email because I'm not in the office all the time. But feel free, any of you that are in here today, to get in touch with me. We did this on a regional basis around the state for the ODOT people here not too long ago. And we're trying to do it for the local agencies now, branch it out. These are some of the guys that did some of the work. I think I have most of them on there. You're getting most of these guys on that list now and a whole lot more today. So I think the T-Squared Center here has really put a nice program together for you, and hopefully you'll get some benefit out of it. I'm getting a signal back there from Joe that I'm way too long-winded. I was going to take some questions, but we're going to have a panel tomorrow afternoon. Am I correct, Joe? We'll have a panel tomorrow afternoon, so if you have any questions, I'll be back for the panel, and I'd be glad to address any questions at that time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. I just have to comment that the budget problem is not new. 50 years ago, when I was in college, my civil engineering department head said, every decision you make when you get out in the real world will be based on economics. I was 20 years old. I didn't have any idea what he was talking about, and I sure do today, and it has to do with our personal life and your job life. So you were right on target with that. Thanks, Bob.
Sure.
We're running a little behind. Let's just take, since you had 5 minutes, well, let's take 5 minutes. Mr. Barnett's a graduate of the University of Akron, has a bachelor's of civil engineering, and is a PE, and worked for URS Consultants when he got out of school. He's a structural engineer, and then went on to construction inspection. And with the consultant, he did construction inspection for ODOT, Turnpike, and the city of Cleveland. In 1990, 11 years ago, Mr. Barnett went with the city of Akron to be liaison for the city on the reconstruction of I-76 in Akron. He then was promoted to assistant construction engineer.
I'm not sure which one this one right here, Pavement.
For the city of Akron.
Hit enter?
Yeah. And I could go on talking about Mr. Barnett while they work with the presentation, but I won't.
He'll work it up for me. Thank you for the opportunity to come to talk to you here today. I'm not an expert by any means. Here today to kind of give you an idea of what we're doing in Akron right now, what we've experienced, some of our problems. Hopefully you can learn from some of our problems. Today here to talk about enabling for the management of pavements, the Akron experience. Notice that's the enabling for the management of pavements. Got a few different topics to talk about in this. First one, politics. The next one, preparation. And then the funding levels. And how do you actually get money at the local level to do this type of work? First one, politics. You're never going to get a politician, I'm sure that all of you know, to listen to you unless there's a sense of urgency. If the people that are voting for them don't have a big concern about what your topic you're trying to push, you're never going to get anywhere. Squeaky wheel gets the grease. In Akron, we had that sense of urgency. We had media reports. We had the media. You as people that oversee pavement can either use the media or choose not to use the media. If you can get the media on your side at all to promote what you're trying to do, that'll go a long way. Sometimes you may have to use them to promote against what the mayor wants to do. So that gets real hairy real quick. We got kind of hairy there too. Luckily the media came out, made a devastating blitz about the roadway conditions, which we've been telling the administration for the last, Well, my predecessor, I've been in this position for about 3 years now, my predecessor was telling the administration for 4 years prior to me coming in, and then when I came in, telling them how bad and how dismal the future looks for the roadways in Akron. But it was not until the media got involved and made this big media blitz on why isn't Akron fixing the roadways that we got anywhere. Citizen complaints, media reports, citizen complaints kind of go hand in hand. If the right citizens complain sometimes. And this is a strange one. We got to the point where I refused to repair some of the roadways in Akron. We had some major arterials that were just completely shot. Matter of fact, went to the service director and the mayor and told them that we're probably 6 months away from physically closing that roadway off because it's a safety issue. Now, when you take a roadway that handles 17 or 18,000 vehicles a day and you tell them that, you know, we're going to have to close this thing off, shut it down, all of a sudden everybody starts to listen to you a little bit. We refused to go in what they wanted us to do on a few specific roadways. Well, can't you just go in and put some asphalt down? Put an inch or two down on the roadway. You know, paint it black, basically. It's like, okay, well, you know, we'll spend $150,000 painting this 1.5 mile section of roadway black, and then in 6 months it's going to fall apart, and then we're really going to look stupid. And everyone's going to complain. You just threw money away. So we stopped doing that. We came down to the point on many of these roadways that we were ready to shut them down until we got projects in the budget, in the design phase, so that we could repair them the following year before we went in and did any repair work too. Continuing with politics, Akron's strange. We assess the property owners that abut the roadway 50% of the cost of construction. So where most people, the residents, are screaming at you to fix the roadways, and you're trying to lobby with council in the mayor's office to get money, we have that same problem too. But then once we say, okay, we're going to resurface this section of roadway, we send out assessment notices to all those property owners. And they go, I got to pay for this? You know, it's going to cost me $800 for you to resurface the roadway in front of my house? Well, it's not that bad. I don't want it resurfaced. So it's amazing the level of rideability that they will accept when it's coming out of general tax dollars as opposed to it's coming out of their pocket for that particular roadway. So we have a little bit of another problem that we have people that don't want the roads fixed. And then if we try to fix them, we try to go in and do a 1.5 inch overlay type of an issue. Well, this roadway is not nearly as bad as the roadway down the street. Why aren't you doing that roadway instead of my roadway? So we face a few strange things that hopefully most of you don't face. We may be moving away from that assessment. Now, I'm sure that all of you have great credibility in everything that you do with your administration, and when you send a request in for funds for anything, nobody ever questions you on your credibility. Well, in Akron, the Public Works Bureau had a very poor credibility. It was always, we receive a request downtown, I shouldn't say we, Public Works, we send a request downtown, downtown gets it and says, okay, well, they're saying here that they want $50,000 for this type of a snow plow with spreader capability with these control systems. Now, what are they trying to scam here on us? They're always looking for that hidden scam. And unfortunately, we deserved that reputation years ago. So since I've been in the last 3.5 years, I've been working very hard on that credibility. I go to them not only when things go well, but when things go bad. But when I go to them when things go bad, here's what happened, here's why it happened, here's how we're going to change this so this doesn't happen again. So, got to work on that credibility, because we've got some tough things coming up here. There needs to be a willingness to accept the change. If your administration, if your mayor's office, service director's office isn't willing to accept something different, I mean, you're dead. How are you ever going to change anything if they're not willing to accept anything different? In Akron, we're at a strange point in our progression. Our service director is not only acceptance of change, but he's demanding it. So we're at a very good point to enact a pavement management type of a system. In Akron, with all the media blitz that happened a little over a year and a half ago, the mayor was kind of forced into a resurfacing task force committee, which is the best thing that ever happened from my perspective. The best thing that ever happened to Akron is we're going to get a resurfacing task force committee. We had one before. We had one in 1988. So that time it was called the Street Task Force Committee. I'm going to show you not the people's names, but the positions that they held that were on that committee. And then I'll show you the ones on the new committee. So think about these type of people on the committee. Public Works Manager was the chair of the committee in '88. Highway Maintenance Superintendent, a Highway Maintenance Supervisor, the President of Council was on the committee. Here's where the politics starts coming in. Engineering Design Division Manager. Akron is kind of an odd entity. The Engineering Bureau is not under Public Works in Akron. It's a separate, completely separate division. They don't answer to me as the Public Works Manager. They have a city engineer that is my equal in the city. So that's a little unusual. I tell people I'm not a true Public Works Manager because I don't have the Engineering Division. Continuation of that. Engineering Administrative Manager. Chairman of the Chairman of Council Public Service Committee. Another councilman sat on this. Capital Budget Administrator. An economist sat on this. Actually, the Public Works Manager at the time was also an economist. He was not an engineer. So they had two economists. And the city assessor. So you could see where they were going with that. Now, the 2001 that we've been meeting now for some time. The chairman is a retired Akron University civil engineering professor. He does not consult. He does not have any ties to government. He's not an activist in government. So the mayor and council have no control over this guy. He's an engineering prof. He's the chairman. I sit on it as a Public Works Manager, a Public Works Supervisor, and a foreman from our highway maintenance sits on it. So we've gone down to the foreman level on this. Also sitting on it, the construction engineer from the city of Akron who retired recently. So he's no longer answering to the mayor and the service director. One of the construction coordinators from our engineering bureau, the president of Flexible Pavements sits on this committee. The president of Pavement Technology sits on this committee. And the president of UAE, which is, I think it's a Unified Architect Engineer. It's an engineering firm, architectural engineering firm. So we've got some people that know pavements, they understand the engineering behind it. Hopefully we've got some people on here that understand the nuts and bolts on what it takes to get it down and what it takes to do it right. Move into preparation. The focus was a lot different from this group from the last. The preparation. The resurfacing task force has been meeting on a monthly basis. We took a hiatus through part of the summer while we were getting some survey information back, but we're starting meeting again in a couple more weeks. So we don't have a success story yet to share with you. This is just where we're at, and we hope it'll be a success story. We worked a lot on the history of paving in Akron. How did we get to the point where we've gotten to today? You know, how did we pick the pavements that we were going to resurface? You know, I would like to, when I worked in the private sector, I always thought that government had all this massive amount of people and all this infrastructure support, that every decision that was made with an enormous amount of information and all of the information that existed on pavements today. So when we repaved a section of roadway in Akron, that somebody could sit there and point to a chart and say, here is technically why this piece of pavement was picked. Boy, was I naive. Did a deep review of the 1988 report, discussion on current conditions. We did some brainstorming for this task force on goals. Give you a few of the brainstorming results here. Decided that whatever we came up with had to be measurable. We had to be able to put numbers to it. We couldn't go in front of council and say, you know, we feel the pavement's bad. We think we need $1 million extra in the budget each year to bring this up to standards. We had to be able to say 62% of your pavement is in a failed condition, whatever that happens to be. We needed it to be measurable. We needed it to be enforceable. When we release this report, it'll be released to the media at the same time it's released to the mayor and the council. That makes it enforceable. Then the politicians have to answer to what they're going to do with this report. Results must be updated and outlive the task force. You know, if you got a pavement management system that you're the only one that ever uses and you retire in 5 years, you're never going to see the benefits of that system. It's going to be a slow process to bring that pavement up to speed. Must enact a pavement management system. It's got to be in a written report. Develop criteria. As the previous speaker was talking about, when do you do crack fill? When do you do slurry seals? When do you do 1.5 inch overlay versus 2.5 inches overlay? In Akron, we do all of those things whenever a couple people decide, we haven't been over in that part of town lately, let's go do something over there. It's pitiful. The way that we pick roadways, we have about 850 miles of roadways in Akron. We have a guy that sits down in the office and says, let's see, I've been on West Market Street lately. That was pretty bad. Yeah, we'll put that on it this year. And let's see, this street over here, I'm getting a lot of complaints about that, so let's add that one to the list this year. That's really where we have been at up till now. Hopefully that'll change. What's council's role in the pavement maintenance selection? I mean, we got to live with council, so we all need to decide what we're going to take from them and what we're not. Are we going to say you're absolutely no part of this at all? And I don't think that's realistic. I think there have to be some part. But if you can convince them that you know what you're doing and you can provide them a written report, it's amazing. Computers, I am not a fan of computers at all. Hate computers with a passion. Used to write software for mapping systems when I was in college. So I was a computer nut in college. Hate them now. But what you got to realize with your politicians is all of a sudden if they have a computer printout in front of them, it must be right. It doesn't matter what you put in there. I walk into some meetings and council meetings when I want to do some big new program that maybe it's 15 sheets of paper to summarize the whole program, but I'll walk in with 4 other notebooks, the biggest ones I can find in my office, and carry them in and set them down on the desk with me and hand out the report and say, here's the summary of the report. And they think that I've got 4 stacks of paper of research. And it's amazing. They're like, oh, wow, this is the greatest thing in the world. Computers, garbage in, garbage out. So it's all a selling issue. Got to look at the funding options. That, if I can go back, the funding options. We're taking a real close look at eliminating the assessments because of the headaches that causes us. We're looking at the possibility of a millage on property taxes so that everybody pays a little bit that has to be dedicated towards pavement restoration. If we do some type of a new funding source like that, the group realizes that we have to legislatively tie that money to pavement maintenance or some community center somewhere that one of the politicians wants that they don't have quite enough money for. Well, let's take it out of the pavement maintenance. So we got to lock that money up. We're working on that. We have Metro, which is our bus company. We've recently had some routes that Metro switched some routes in some of our residential streets that within 3 months those streets saw 15 inches of rutting. I physically couldn't drive my city car across it because it was never designed for those types of loads. So we have to coordinate with them better. This all comes down to, it became very evident very early on in the process that we needed a computerized pavement management system, and if we didn't have it, we were not going to be successful in anything that we were doing. We looked at a lot of different ones. We decided that MicroPaver, I mean, there's a lot of programs out there. I used to write the software, so I helped develop new stuff. If you got somebody that's knocking at your door saying, I've got the newest program for you, and it does everything, man, turn around and run. Kick him out of your office as quickly as you can. I've seen too many programs go in that were brand new on the market, no one's ever used before, but this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. If it ain't easy, it ain't going to work. And if you're not dedicated to it, whatever that system is, if you're not dedicated to it, it's not going to work either. Funding. We had our task force chairman go to city council, and we had a request in for $260,000 to a consultant. Allow us, have that consultant. We actually bought this program probably a year ago. The program's only $800 bucks. I mean, that's the easy thing. The hard thing's getting the data to go in it. And so we thought, we'll buy the program, $800 bucks, and then we'll fit it in, the inspection of the streets and the input of the data. We'll just fit it in our spare time. We went out and started to do it, and we realized that we were in over our head and that we didn't have 8 people that we could dedicate 40 hours a week, year-round, to gather this data throughout the city of Akron and put it in the computer. I mean, it just wasn't going to happen. So we went to a consultant that does this professionally. The consultant has done all the inspections. They're currently inputting all the data into the computer. They're providing us hardware. If you're like us, you can get money to have a consultant do stuff for you. But if you put in a requisition to get 2 new laptops and a new PC, it's like you just try to commit genocide or something, trying to get that equipment. So we roll those into our consultant packages. Okay, we tell the consultant, put $25,000 in here for equipment. We're going to tell you what to buy. You just go out and buy it and charge us for it. So we build that type of thing into our consultants. A lot easier for him to go out to buy it than us. Funding. What we're going to be doing, the biggest thing with this, and council is pushing and the mayor's office is pushing to have this report done pretty quick here because we're working on our budgets for next year. They want to know how much they're going to have to budget for our resurfacing program. So what we're doing is we're running different scenarios. At different levels of funding, what are the projected service ratings on those roadways into the future? So we can say, okay, if you want your roadways to look like crap, you give us this amount of money. If you want your roadways to be drivable, you give us this amount of money. And remember, all this is being handed to the media. At the same time, it's being handed to council and the mayor. So what are they going to say? You're going to give it to the media and you're going to give it to council, and council is going to say, okay, we'll fund you at the crap level of roadway. They're not going to do that. So we're locked. We know that we're locked into a lot more money this next year. Let me I give you a little bit of idea on the history of some paving in Akron, just a real quick 4-year average to let you know that if your ratios are similar where you're at, if your roads aren't disgusting right now, you're on your way to that, because ours are crap, but we're going to get a handle on it. 1988, our maintenance program is basically arterial collector resurfacing, residential resurfacing, chip and seal. Now, our chip and seal is different than most people do chip and seal. When we go in and do a chip and seal, we generally mill off 2 inches of pavement, put a single lift back of 402 of 2 inches, and then we do a double slurry seal with stone on each. So it's more than just a standard chip and seal. It's actually putting some new asphalt down to build some strength. If we can get away without milling on chip and seal, thicker is better. We try to do that. In Akron, though, we're pretty well stuck with most every roadway that we have to mill. Otherwise, we end up with a lot of drainage problems. people getting in and out of driveways, that type of thing. Not very rural. Arterial collector in both residential programs are milled 2.5 inches off, come back with 2 lifts of asphalt, a 402 and a 404 topping. That's our standard program. So you can see funding levels. Total for 98 was about $1.9 million. And remember too, that's the total cost, $1.9 million. The City of Akron now, the City of Akron capital budget, only half of that comes out. So the City of Akron tax dollars was only $950,000 in 1998. The other $950,000 came from assessments that people pay over a 5-year period. You can either pay it up front or pay over a 5-year period on your property taxes. So if you're thinking about how much budget the City of Akron's spending out of city tax dollars, cut those all in half. And chip and seal assesses at a higher rate. It's about 75% of the cost of doing the work we charge for. So as you can see, from year to year, about 1.8 million, 98, 1999, 1.7 million roughly, 2000, 2.2 million. 2001, this year, they knew that we're working on this report. They knew this task force is coming. So they knew that we're going to be coming in and saying, we need $4, $5, $6 million a year to try to catch up for the next 5 to 6 years, and then we can drop down a little bit from there to maintain, because we're going to be in this catch-up period. So because of that, they found an extra $1 million to put into the program. So that gives you an idea of what Akron has done over the last 4 years. The mileage in Akron, what this represents, our paving programs in miles. 1998, on the arterial collector program, we only did about 3.3 miles. Residentials, we did a lot more, about 13 miles, which is still nothing in the city of Akron. Chip and seals, these vary quite a bit. If we're in a low budget year, historically what we've done when we've sat down and said, okay, what are we going to do this year? Well, we don't have much money. Let's do a lot more chip and seal. We can still get our mileage. Our assessment rate's so high that we get the most bang for our buck. So the way that we're picking the streets that we're going to do is how much money we have to dedicate to each program. They give us a lump sum of money and we can spend it any way we want to within the arterial collector, the residential, and the chip and seal. Which, that is the wrong way to pick your pavement that you're going to fix. Now, this is a startling one to me. What I did on this is I said, okay, let's figure out what percentage of our arterial collectors we paved in 1998. So in 1998, we paved about 1.4% of our arterial collectors. If you look at the end, the annual averages, over the last 4 years on arterial collectors, we've averaged 2.8% of our arterial collectors we've paved each year. 2.3% roughly on residential, and 3.8% on chip and seal. And that's because chip and seal assesses higher. Now, some of these are skewed a little bit, but arterial collectors, Akron, we have 230 miles of arterial collectors. With that percentages we showed on the last slide, that means that we'll pave once every 34 years on an arterial collector. How many people's pavements last 34 years? Now, granted, these numbers are skewed because what this doesn't take into consideration is monies that we get with ICE-T funds, issue 2. I would have liked to have had rolled everything in and given you a better presentation, so these are a little bit high. But they're not that far off. Residentials, very seldom do you ever get state money to do or federal money to do residentials. So this one's a little closer to reality. 320 miles once every 40 years in our residentials. I mean, it's appalling. It's disgusting. And we wonder why we have potholes and problems. Chip and seals, we do the best on that. It assesses the most. Once every 26 years. Now these are strictly asphalt roadways. So we have about 730 miles of asphalt roadways. We have another 160, 170. We don't really know how many miles of roadway we have. We think we're in the ballpark. When the consultant, after doing their inspection and putting this all on a computer, will be able to tell us exactly how much we have. So right now we're just kind of guessing. But the remainder of the streets, the roughly 150, 160 additional miles are concrete and brick. We still have a lot of brick streets in Akron that have its own unique problems. And that's it. Hopefully that was well, a little bit longer than I was supposed to take, but any questions before I take off? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Any chance that that consultant could make a presentation to us?
Maybe by the end of the day, that consultant will be making a presentation.
For resurfacing and other product or other programs, and we're hopefully going to be able to do something like that again soon. I'm just going to really talk about the methods that we use, and it kind of comes down to the types of pavements you have. Obviously, we have asphalt and concrete pavements that we have to deal with. We also have brick pavements that we have to address. And about 4 years ago, we've kind of consolidated our efforts in our pavement maintenance that we contract out, along with trying to develop and promote a more of a preventative maintenance program. I mean, everybody's talking about it. It's the buzzword there for a long time. Some of the things I think we've been doing for a long time that really didn't get a lot of notice, were along those lines of preventative maintenance. So we're trying to focus more on that. The dollars are just, not there like they used to be. You've got to, especially in a growing city like Columbus, we've got to be able to stretch those as best we can. So I'm just going to kind of run down through some of the programs, and there are 7 types of efforts that we do in maintaining our pavements, and I'll talk briefly on them. And if you want to jump in, ask questions, I'm kind of low-tech and informal, so just jump in anytime. Our resurfacing program has been kind of the lead in how we maintain things over the years. When I first started, in fact, I'm kind of fortunate the gentleman's going to speak after me, kind of gave me my start in this, so it's kind of full circle to come up here and be part of a presentation with him. But we were on average around about $1 million, $1.5 million a year for a paving program. The last few years in the late 90s, we were up around $6.5 million to $7 million in our paving program. And as that program has grown, it used to be something that we'd start in the fall, or I'm sorry, start in the springtime around February. We bid our contracts out by April, and we were paving through the summertime. We've had to now push all that back, and we're starting the year before. In fact, the guys right now are getting ready for next year's program as we speak. But we've typically led about 4 contracts a year, and on average, we cover about 200 lane miles of paving with the budgets that we have established for us. We use a combination of 404 asphalt, but we also use a fiberized asphalt, which we've had probably since 1988, I think, is when we first started it. Gary's shaking your head back there. We use that a lot for heavy rutting conditions, industrial areas, a lot of the arterials, to give us that resistance to rutting. Columbus was notorious for having every bus pad in town, or every bus stop in town, with that asphalt shoving over that curb. And I don't say we've eliminated it, but we've done a pretty good job of knocking that down. This also, in our contracts, we include all the cutouts, crack sealing, basically all the prep work that's involved in it. We do some curb work in that, although I try to keep that down as much as I can. The rule of thumb is if it's gone, then we replace it, but if it's not, we're usually staying away from it. I think with over 13 million feet of curb that we calculated a few years ago, that's a kind of an awesome undertaking to try to maintain that, but I'm not going to get into that right now. Brick repair. We've got 32 miles of brick streets, and we let an annual contract to replace brick repair areas, mostly handwork kind of work. We've had, instance where we did have to go in and do a whole street one time because it just, you know, it was, instead of spot repairing it, it was just, you know, not cost effective to do that. So we closed the road down, poured a new base, reset it in brick. I think we're going to get into that a little bit more as the years come around. Pavement recycling and overlays. I think the first one we did was back in 1993. We were able to go into a cold-in-place recycling. That program has kind of grown for us over the years, and we're into a point now where a lot of the rural routes and stuff that I think somebody had mentioned earlier, you know, that was not designed to handle that kind of traffic, where they're building truck depots out on country roads, they just don't hold up anymore. So we've effectively been able to reconstruct that road in place by the recycling and overlay in about a week's time, and get that road back in service and handle the trucks a lot better than what we've done before. Process, it used to be called a cold-in-place recycle, which I'm sure most of you have heard of, but we've gone to more of the full-depth reclamation, which gets pretty much full depth in the asphalt. We do put a 3-inch overlay on every one of those now. We were trying to get away with just a scratch course and an overlay, but we were still getting some rough rides, so we've gone to just an intermediate and surface course on that type of application. We're trying to do streets that, as we look at our planning, thoroughfare plan, you know, something that's not going to be reconstructed in 5 years or 10 years or something, you know, trying to do the ones that, you know, where the edges are broken down, where we've got an extreme amount of failures, and it's just not cost effective for us to do pavement repairs and then overlays. You know, this just basically gets us a new street in a very short period of time. We've been very happy with it. Everything after this is more along the lines of the preventative maintenance, and I can't say enough about what crack sealing has done for us in extending the lives of our pavements. You know, we have shifted kind of our focus a little bit on what crack sealing used to be. You know, it was something that we were going in on older subdivisions that were cracked up pretty bad, probably 20 years old, and crack sealing, and we definitely got the spiderweb effect. Got a lot of complaints with that too, but that was the policy at the time, and then we would come back in and slurry seal over top of that. Well, we've through the paving program and through some of the other measures, we're at a point now where I think we're able to go into the newer subdivisions. Columbus has a lot of concrete base. Well, the only typical we have is a concrete base, a composite pavement with 2.5 inches of asphalt on it. So that reflective crack comes back pretty quickly. So we're trying to jump on those in the first 5 to 7 years and do crack sealing to that. And I think down the road we'll definitely see the benefit to that. We're also starting to look at our resurfacing program and crack seal those streets on a 3 to 4 year, I guess, cycle after we've resurfaced. We've kind of got into a pattern now the last few years that we are looking at those streets, rating those streets, and putting those on our list for crack seal. And again, crack sealing, I think, and people have stressed it, probably one of the best bangs for your buck out there. We've been real pleased with it. Microsurfacing. Columbus kind of got away from microsurfacing. I think probably the last one we did was probably 85 on Major Morse Road until 1999, when we did a micro on Lane Ave, or I'm sorry, on 315 out here, which was crack sealed twice, pretty heavy. I think it was originally paved, resurfaced in 1986. We had been crack sealing it and then decided to put the micro on it, and we're very, very pleased with that. We wanted to do the whole piece, but because of the 315 construction, we stopped at Lane Avenue to let that project get completed. And then this past year, we jumped in and finished up the lane up to Ackerman Road. So if you head out that way and you see it, and it looks nice and black, we just did that a few months ago, right, Bruce? Okay. But again, it's something that we're looking at more of. Again, stretching the dollar as best we can. We're also looking at using this on a lot of, I'll call them the commercial collectors. Columbus has a lot of 4 and 5 lane commercial roads that feed a lot of the development areas that we maintain. So that's what we're shooting for, is to do that. We've also, over the years, used a version of the micro as our latex tack. And I call that on brick streets, where we would mill off a street that was paved years and years ago but found brick underneath it. We would just tack that, and had some pretty bad experiences of the sheets of asphalt just flying right off of it, especially during rain. And we decided to try the micro on it, and it sticks pretty good. We've been very pleased with it. So it's been, in anything we spec for a contract that we know we've got brick underneath, or even if we make a change in the field that we don't know it's there until we mill off that surface, our procedure is to put the micro on that brick as our tack material and then pave right on top of it. And we've had some success with that. And our slurry seal program, again, typically we were slurrying on streets that were crack sealed the previous year or two. Again, it's a very good preventative maintenance procedure. Right now we're budgeted for next year for about a $500,000 crack seal program, and then about another $500,000 to $750,000 for a combination of micro and slurry. So depending on which streets we find out we're going to do as part of our program, that's how that's going to shake out. But again, we're using it as more and more of a preventative maintenance, going into newer subdivisions, probably newer than what we've ever done before, to try to stretch things out and make that life cycle curve that everybody uses apply here. The last one that I had, and this is a program that we instituted about 4 years ago. At one time, Columbus had a design on cul-de-sacs that everything else was a composite pavement, but the design for cul-de-sacs was full depth concrete, 7 inches of concrete. And we weren't doing a whole lot with those, mainly because we didn't have the money to do anything with them, but we were able to convince folks to start off a pilot program of sawing and sealing those joints, doing some isolated repairs when you need to, and I'm not talking about replacing half the street. I'm talking about when you had a slab go bad or something, or a joint broke down or whatever, and possibly do some under sealing, some leveling, and then go in and saw and seal those joints and do a hot applied crack filler. And we started out with about a $250,000 program the first year. We've got probably close to 1,000, or I think I mentioned here about 5% of our inventory is concrete pavements. We've knocked out, I think, about 300 of them so far. Some of them are falling apart on us, and that's kind of what's initiated this. The salt through the wintertime, I think, is playing a big effect on it, and we're seeing some of them that we can't maintain anymore. We have to do an overlay or some sort of asphalt pavement because we can't afford to totally reconstruct, so we're kind of in that middle ground area. But this program for us has been, I think, a very good application of dollars well spent, I guess you could say. We're typically looking at concrete pavements that are in the 10 to 15 year range. I just recently had an experience with a lady up in the north end of town that she couldn't understand why we were in there, and she moved in her house in 1987 spending money on her street when there was others in worse conditions. And I think it was Bob who was talking about that, trying to convince her. I spent close to a week in conversations with her, explaining to her what we were doing and why we were doing it. She said everything from, I'm going to call the council, I'm going to call the mayor, and I knew she probably knew the mayor when she used his first name, so I knew I better be careful what I say. But I was convincing, I think, to the point that I was confident in what we were doing and why we were doing it. So if I was questioned on it, I could justify the reasoning for it. And I've had to go through and tell my group of guys, because we do get a lot of calls about complaints for this or complaints for that, or why are you doing this, why are you doing that. Confidence in the program that we have is good, I think. We're accomplishing a lot in our efforts. Don't doubt what it is you're doing, because these are tried and true methods, and you can go to other cities or townships or whatever and say these are the kinds of things that other people are doing. These are effective measures to maintain our pavements. So I think I won the argument with her. I didn't get a call from the city hall, so I know I'm in pretty good shape, I think. The biggest thing about this too, and again because it was a pilot program for us, was cleanup. We're in a residential neighborhood. We had to tighten up our specs from the first year we did it because that sawing process creates a lot of slurry on the roadways. So we had to implement changes to how our specs were written to make sure that we cleaned up our mess at at the end of each day. And once we did that, a lot of our calls went away. But it's been a very good program for us. Just a couple of contacts. There's my name, and I forgot to put my phone number on there, but there's my email address. Feel very free to contact me anytime. I've also put Ed Cagle on here, who we got from the city of Akron, so I thank Paul for that. Very good guy. Real pleased to have him. But Ed's our pavement management engineer and can also answer a lot of the same questions. So if you can't get a hold of me, there's Ed's number also. Other than that, if there's any questions. Yes, sir. We have. We've tried several different things. The one year we tried the micro with a fabric. Got kind of expensive. We've gone to a process, the SAMI process. If you've heard that, it's something that Strasser locally is a supplier of. It's a polymer material. It controls the. I mean, the biggest thing was controlling the cracking that we knew was going to come back through. The fabric procedure kind of priced us out of it, I think, and we've been real pleased with the way the SAMI's been working for us. What we're doing is, in a lot of cases, sawing a joint and creating a butt joint up around the curb, and then laying the asphalt into that butt joint, so we don't have to block roof drains and things like that, and driveways, and cause water ponding in drives and things. So, yes, we used it in the past, but not at this point. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Yeah, you're basically going to get the cracks reflecting right back through, and we've used the SAMI now for a couple of years, and I've had success with it. When you put the fabric down, there's no question that it retards the cracking. It's just we thought there was a cheaper way to do it and get the same benefit or close to it. Yeah, Eric.
I live in the city of Columbus, and Concrete Street did exactly that. You saw the curb line,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not aware of what you used, but it looked to me like a standard chip and seal. And then there was a hot mix overlay put on. This was a deep-cracked concrete pavement, about 25, maybe 30 years old. And I'm impressed with the way it worked.
Was this in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I believe it's about 1 year old today.
That was probably then the SAMI that we put down.
And it really works. It's working very well.
We hope it continues. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Gary has been with the city of Columbus, worked with Doug up until, when did you go with the county?
About 7 years ago.
7 years ago. He went with the Franklin County Engineers Office and is now the Chief Deputy for Operations here at Glass.
Looking at the program, we got another Chief Deputy of Operations, county. Oh, there was one here. There you are, hiding, huh? Butler. Real quick, because I don't want to hold you guys up for lunch. I asked Joe called me, wanted me to come talk. I said, Joe, I'm a traffic engineer. What do you want me to come talk for? He says, well, I got plenty of experts. I need someone who doesn't know what he's talking about to balance out the program. So that's why I'm here. Roughly, I was with the city of Columbus for, I don't know, 20 years. ODOT before that, and Franklin County for 7 years. So what I want to go over, and what reminded me, thinking about the expert, is that I remember a story where a reporter's talking to some leading person in the field, industrial person or something, and asking what was their key to success, and the key to success was making the right decision. Reporter said, that's pretty good. How do you make the right decision? Having the right knowledge. How do you get the knowledge? By making bad decisions. So I qualify on that part. So I'm going to show you a lot of bad decisions I made in the past and what happened. It's kind of funny because I have worked with so many people. I asked Doug, since he was speaking before me, what are you going to talk about? He didn't tell you, but he said, Gary, I'm going to tell him everything you taught me, but I don't know what I'm going to do with the extra 20 minutes. So basically, I'll start off, and based on what we've done here in Franklin County and maybe some of the experience I've had with the city of Columbus, but know what you have. It sounds kind of basic, but it's really, you got to know what you have. City of Columbus has a pavement management system. I was there when we first installed it, very high-tech, very impressive. It's a videotape every mile of road, and you still thump them, Doug?
Yep.
It's a Dynaflex machine. We used to call it Thumper when we had one. And then we also, in Franklin County, went to Paver, which is kind of a low-tech. We use a consultant too, Paul. It's hard to find a good one, though. We use the same one you do, I think, though. Yeah, I think so. Yep. So, also, I put down the pad of paper method. My predecessor, Rel Damien, he'd simply take a pad of paper. Everybody who complained about the street, didn't make any difference. He wrote it down. He went out and drove every single street. Basically, what I want to point out here, it's really not important what method you use, but you should have a method, and it should be based on some logic. First time I went out with a Rel, I don't know. I lose track of time. I've been involved with this for 29 years, guys, so I just lose track of time. But we drove down the street. There was 3 of us. I sat in the back seat. We drove down the street 25 miles an hour. A Rel pulls off the side of the road, turns to the other guy, said, well, how do you rate that street? The guy says, 3.56. Rel says, maybe 3.5. What do you say, Gary? I said, what the hell are you talking about? But they roughly rated them between 0 and 5, wasn't it, Joe? And they just had a method. They developed it. It worked for them. And he actually carried it out to the hundreds, and there was a logic to that. And what his logic was, when he drive down, if he say something 3.56, someone was 3.5, he knew that 3.5 was just a little bit worse. But they were doing it for so long, but it was a method and it worked very well for them. And it was just, so develop your own. If you don't have anything, you don't want to buy something, develop your own, but come up with some kind of method. Record what you do in the streets each year. That's one of the nice things with the computer systems, but try to keep track of it. You'd be amazed when someone leaves, you don't have the faintest idea in the world what happened. Have no idea what's on that street, especially in the county system. We got streets that have been there since ever. They just materialize and nobody knows what's there. One of the things we do with our survey department, every time they put in a survey marker, they're supposed to record down what they find in terms of the pavement, how thick it was, what was there, and then they record that and we put it in a card file. We're now putting it on a computer system. The head method is good until the head leaves. What I'm referring to that is my predecessor here again was a Rel had everything in his head, and he was brilliant at it. He was really, really wonderful. Doug, he was a predecessor to Doug, and it's a very, very tough job. But Rel retired. Well, unfortunately, he took his head with him. So if you have that method, try to get it out of the head before the head leaves. Get it on something, get it on a computer, get it on a pad of paper, do anything but get it down. Check with maintenance crews, that's always a good source too. I just want to go through the real basics. You guys went through some of the higher stuff. I just want to go through some real basic stuff that we do and how we do it and what the results is. Crack sealing, heard everyone talk about it. My guys, when I first got there, loved doing pouring the AC in the crack, spreading some sand on it. Who does that? You guys still do that, right? My guys love doing that. I stopped them from doing it 7 years ago. I'll show you why in a few minutes. We have AC with rubber. We had one of our, I think it's okay. We haven't had real good results with it. Tom Nutini is with me. Tom is my maintenance engineer, highway maintenance engineer, but he's also in the same capacity with the city. Quick story with that is we have a contractor who was doing minor widening work, and he had a pavement joint, and we always told him to seal up the joint. And he'd use the AC and sand, but the joint comes back just like that. The AC disappears. So he did, we got blocks of AC and rubber, and you put it in the kettle, melt it. He told me to go out and look at it, so he looked pretty good. So I went out and looked at it. When I went out and looked at it, it was laying in the ditch. He said, oh, I forgot to clean the pavement and blow it out. I'm going to do another one. And he did another one. He said, come out and look at this one. Tom told him, why don't you just peel it up and bring it in the office. We'll look at it in here. The other one is AC with fiber, polypropylene, polyester. I don't know if that controversy still exists or not, but Both of them have their properties, and one melts, one doesn't, but we basically use the polypropylene fiber. Basically, this is similar. This is if you can see it, this is a crack. You can see the AC was up here. You can see where they poured it and filled the joint. You can see it better in the field. You can see the cracks right back. There's another one that's a little bit tighter, not as old. This is the one where we crack sealed. This is a subdivision I live in, so I know it's about 7 years old. And that crack there were some unusual things with the street, and they sealed it pretty quick right after the construction. So it's about 7 years old, and you can see that the asphalt's worn off the surface, and the crack's still filled with the material. The fiber tends to hold it together and leaves it there. I got some pictures, I got some places where I can show you 8 or 9 years old, and the stuff's still in the crack. So, or if you guys may like pouring the asphalt in the joint, it looks nice when it gets done, but I don't think it's worth the effort, and that's about 4 years old on a subdivision street too. In terms of crack sealing, it goes through the real quick things. Tom, you can jump in if you want. When we did start off in crack sealing, we did a pretty big way. Like I said, when you do it, as soon as it's needed, someone says, what's DA? That's duh. We started on several programs. I was with the city when we initiated some of these, and I remember the first ones we decided to start doing entire subdivisions. Rather than just doing streets, we decided to do whole areas. One of the mistakes we made was we started on subdivisions that were pretty old. As a result, we put down a lot of crack sealing. Right, Tom? A lot of crack sealing. Also, we put them on streets. We didn't pay attention. They didn't have curb and gutter, and there was no sidewalks in some of these streets. People used the streets for where they walked. Man, did we get complaints. We crack sealed it. Must have been the hottest summer in the entire history of Ohio. It was in the 90s for days, and people were complaining about it tracking all over the place. We also crack sealed the gutter. Oh man. Cars parked on it. They went to pull away, and it wrapped right around their tires. Tom had one guy who was complaining about it. Tom went out and met with him and was standing there talking to the guy, had the guy kind of settle down, right, Tom? And as the guy walked away, his shoe came off his foot because it stuck to the crack ceiling. So what we did in that case, we backed off. We looked at some of the subdivisions. You can over crack ceiling. At a certain point, you'll know it after you see it. You just don't do it. We did some. That's why I said don't wait too long. We started doing some like 4 or 5 years old, and it worked much, much better. Yeah, don't wait too long because you might pay it with crack sealing. Even with my own crews, we got a small kettle. I think it's 125 gallons with the paddles in it and everything, because do small bridges, you're not going to get a contractor to come out there and do it because it's just not worth the effort. There's more production. Bruce may even add this in later, since I worked with Bruce too, that my bridge guys went out and they were so used to putting in the AC, they were crack sealing everything they saw, and they didn't realize thinner was better. And when we got done, we had to do an emergency contract. We rally macked it because it was like skating on ice. They went overboard. So you really have to watch it. It's good stuff, though. Yeah, don't serve the edge of the gutters. We found that out. At least it didn't work for us. Especially if you don't have parking on the street, you're okay, but the cars parked on it and it pulled it right up. Make sure the cracks are blowing out. Need some quality control check on the amount of fiber, just to keep everybody in line. Just don't assume what they're putting in is what you're supposed to be putting in. So check it. Doesn't cost that much to check it. I might get a little controversy here, but I do like square yards. A lot of people we used to pay crack sealing by the foot or by the pound. Square yards, you're saying, how in the hell can you pay by square yards? We pay by square yard of the pavement. So we figure up the total square yard of pavement. That's our unit of method of pavement. Contractor has to go out and look at the streets. He has to estimate how much crack sealing goes down. Versus you have to estimating how many pounds you're going to put down, how many feet you're going to put down. Everyone I've estimated way low. So we go on to square yards. One of the nice things about square yards, well, it's easier to calculate. 2, I think they end up putting it down thinner because they don't get, the less they put down, they get the same unit price. It's not going to change on them. Put it down per pound, the more they put down, the more they get paid. So, and like I said, you can do your own crack sealing on a very limited basis. I would not encourage doing it on a large scale, but we got a small kettle for doing those small spot repairs or joints here and there where the contractor it's not worth their effort. It's not going to come out. It's just not, do a small widening or whatever, but it's worked out pretty well. typically before an overlay, crack sealing we've done. If you have a street that has a lot of cracks, I just hold off, try to get scheduled for some kind of either pavement or slurry seal or IMAC or something, because you get that much down, if it's on an area where they got to walk, you're going to hear about it. Typical, we go down to pretty small cracks. I think the standard was 1/4 of an inch, right, Bruce? We went down to 1/8 of an inch. Typically, that's just the method in terms of the crack sealing, the wand, and everything. High-tech method for wetting it down as it cool it off. I figure a guy's bicep must be about that big holding that wand out there all the time, but it's real basic. Biggest bang for your bucks, if you're short on cash, put it in crack sealing. I agree with Paul said, you know, you're going to come across some streets, you just got to let them go. They're gone. Don't put your money in it, but better spent in doing the routine maintenance. Berms. We're pretty religious on berms. When I was with the city, we weren't so religious. Going to the county, it's a whole different ball game. One of the things we, in terms of berms, keep water away and give support for the side of the road. We're real big into trying to get them those graded out. We have a program every year. Crews go out and do berm work, chip sealing. If they're high, we grade them out. One of the biggest things that cause damage to our berms is our plows. But we're very, very big on the berm in terms of preventive maintenance. Like I said, we have an annual program. We have a good annual program. We chip seal. Recommend chip sealing over paving. A lot of people will recommend guys resurfacing the street. Say, hey, I can just widen out the paver. I can put an inch of asphalt on that, cover up that berm, save you money, be cheaper than chip sealing it. Yeah, it is cheaper than chip sealing it. Problem I don't like about it, you lose the edge of the road. Now you have an asphalt out there that's only 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches thick. You'll see it start to crack up after 3 or 4 years. What are you going to do to it? This chip sealing, I can regrade it, re-chip it and everything. I got streets where you can see we can put all kinds of crack sealing down the edge because it broke up. Edge line magically moves over and the paint crew goes over. It's very, very hard to keep track of. I just don't like it. Use asphalt base for berms that carry traffic and chip seal the surface. We have some areas where you have a lot of rutting or something. People go out there and put the aggregate down. Go back a little bit later, put the aggregate down. Go back a little bit later, put the aggregate down. I don't know, just somebody beating your head in the ground there. Why keep repeating something that doesn't work? We had situations where we put in like 6 or 7 inches of 301 and chip seal the surface. Looks like a berm. Well, then at least they drive over, it lasts a little bit longer. Basically, our operation is our crews. How many miles we do a year? You have any idea, Tom?
Between 150 and 175.
Miles of berms we do every year. Just a distributor, stone box, rubber tire roller, and clean it off. Pretty simple operation. We have 4 headquarters, and we pull guys from each headquarters and create a specialty crew, and that's what they do for about 2 months, 3 months, 2 months. Sorry you can't see this. This is a situation I just thought I'd pass on because hopefully we can walk out here maybe with some ideas someone else has tried. We had several areas where you had a guardrail because you had a deep drop-off, and what happened is the road is really eroded away behind that guardrail. I mean, it's a steep drop-off. You have no support. Your berm's gone. Your edge of the road's starting to go. What you can't see there is what we did was we took out the guardrail post, which is standard, I think, 6 feet, Tom. We put a 9-foot guardrail post. Then we put 4x4 treated lumber between the guardrail posts. You can see 3 of them there, but there's several buried below ground. So what we built was, I call it a guardrail retaining wall in order to get our side support back. And then we used chips, asphalt chips, to build up between the road. Hell, the berm is probably thicker, a lot stronger than the road now. We've done that in several locations, but I've seen a lot. You'll see it where the guardrail's leaning over because the roads are eroding away and everything, so we just went to a lot deeper post and used treated lumber between the posts and actually built a retaining wall. Feel sorry for the person who runs into it and the crew's got to replace it, but it works really, really well. I think we've done it 3 times. This is something that's a similar problem, seen it all over the place. Trucks driving wide. This happens to be a curb street, but we've got them on uncurbed streets. Typically, I don't care how big you make the radius, the trucks are going to drive over it. One solution, I call this the big rock solution. That's inventive, but the problem was this was a big rock too. Trucks drove over it and pushed it into the mud. You can try the big rock solution if you want, but Don't put your name on it because you probably get sued if someone runs into it. So I prefer this one. We did this, we did a bunch of locations, but basically what it is was the same thing. Trucks were driving over the curb. And all we did was put in 6-inch aggregate base and 10 inches of concrete. So basically we put on a roadway standard, so you're not going to stop them, so why fight them? Just put in a hard surface, let them drive over it. Someone says, well, how far do you put that behind the curb? As far as they drive. You just go out and look and see where they're driving, put the concrete right where they're driving. Why put it in 2 feet, 3 feet? They're just going to drive over it. It works very, very well. In the city of Columbus, I don't know, there's tons of these things. There's a couple in the county now, too. Ditches. Need to get the water away from the edge of the road. Water causes you more trouble than anything. It makes the side of the road soft. You lose that side support and the road will start to push out. Regrade the ditch if possible. Piping the ditch is preferable. If nothing else worked, when we've done this, just push the ditch out away from the road. It even doesn't drain. If it was going to pond up, I'd rather have it be a little bit further out from the road than right next to it. And we've done that. In terms of enclosing roads, piping ditches, we probably do about 4 or 5 miles a year. Basically with our own crews. And that's worked out pretty well. I always liked this one because I live fairly close to here and I thought for sure that mailbox was going to fall over, but they managed to put that pipe in and that mailbox never fell over. If you see, it's just a metal pipe in a concrete block and they wired it up to the mailbox and it stayed there. And still there, it looks just like that today. This is one similar where we regraded the ditch, but where we had it close to the edge of the road, and it wasn't that bad, but it had a steep drop off. And basically all we did was just regraded it and pushed it out further from the road. We had one road, Bruce was working for the county then. When you hear from Bruce later, we did a design, what was it, $2.5 million to rebuild the road, Bruce? And we did a recycling with the company he's now involved with, kind of. And same problem, we had ditches, didn't drain, it's flat. And what we did was we pushed the ditch further out. Still doesn't drain, still flat. At least it's not up against the edge of the road. It's a simple solution, works, gets the water away from the edge of the road. Potholes, fix them as soon as possible, even before they become a pothole. Proper method, you've all gone through courses, saw cut it, clean it out, recompact the base, tack the edges, compact the asphalt, and lifts. Who does that? I didn't think any of you did that. Okay. Close? Well, we use the second method, at least chip the loose material out of the hole, tack the edges, compact and lifts. Third method, remove loose material, hopefully the water. Use cold mix with no tack, at least drive over the material before you leave the site. We used that a lot from the city of Columbus when I was there because it's just a matter of number of holes. You know, it's hard to keep up when you're falling way, way, way behind. Fourth method, spray patch machine, which become very, very popular. I really, really like this one. We have a small machine. The city of Columbus has 3 fairly large, I think, Roscoe machines. I'll show you those in a little bit. First method, a lot of people don't do the first method, so it takes too long, costs them too much. But I'm telling you, if you do the first method, you're going to save time, you're going to save money, and you're going to save your road. Okay? Sure, the guys can throw that cold mix in there and back off and be gone in a matter of a few seconds, but trust me, they'll be back, and they'll be back, and they'll be back, and they'll be bigger and bigger and bigger. Oh yeah, that's right. We do saw cut them out. I forgot that. We are one of the agencies that do saw cut them out. Right, Tom? That was a real small hole, Doug, you told me about earlier. Also, look at the road. I'll just give you a little background on Franklin County. Our average rating, we do the standard method, 100 scale. Our average rating is 80 on our roadways. Since I've been here 6 or 7 years, when we've done the resurfacing, the streets I've looked at, I got a couple of people here who can help me out. Very few times we have potholes in the roads we overlay. You can see what they're doing here. It wasn't exactly a pothole. The area was starting to see some problems there. See the rest of the road, you can see the shape of it. We went out and saw cut it out. Replaced it. You can see up close. Can you see the pothole? No, because there isn't one. But there was going to be one. Mr. Circle, who used to be the county engineer, said if if anyone found a pothole on the county road, he'd go out there and fill it personally. So it was a strong incentive. And we have very, very few. The only place I really got potholes was on bridges, and that's because the bridge deck's falling apart, but we have a program to replace those. Talking about that reminds me, Joe, I'm glad I got here because you emailed John Circle to let me know about it. You know, John died a year ago.
That's the email you gave us.
Oh, yeah. Then he faxed me some information and sent it to an elderly home, right, Joe?
Yes, that's the...
This is our spray patch machine. What you see, they're working on the berms. This is the one you can also use for patching. It's really nice. You can have it where you can blow out just air so you can clean the hole out, then spray, and you control the mix of asphalt and chips. This is a trailer unit, probably cost 30-some thousand. City of Columbus has got, well, how many big Roscoe machines they got, Doug, do you know? 4 or 5 of them? Tom, you remember?
They have 3 now.
3 now? Those are about $160,000. But it's really, really, if you have a problem with the potholes, that's an excellent operation. I remember when we first looked at those machines, our maintenance engineer was looking at them. He invited me out there, and I was asking all kinds of questions about the machines. And after I left, the guy asked the maintenance engineer, who was the guy asking all the questions? He said, well, that's the guy who's going to buy it. So, I better go talk to him. So, I think we bought 2 of them that year. This is Durapatch, right, Tom? This machine we just got this year, and the guys seem to really like it, just doing the edges along there. See how the hole he's filling? That's because there isn't one. There isn't. He's just sealing up the edges of the berm. Utility cuts. Go through this real quick. I don't know how many people have problems with utility companies. Hey, Paul, you're going to have problems with utility companies. Utility cuts versus a pothole, what's the difference? There's no difference between a poor repair utility cut and a pothole. There is none whatsoever. City of Columbus, just to give you a little, real quick background, because that's my background in utility cuts. We rewrote the whole program. In terms of utility cuts, we used to hand out like 3,500, 4,000 permits a year. Went through a whole program, rewrote the ordinances, worked extensively with the police department. Worked with the police department so well, Tom was invited to the police academy every year to train cadets on utility stuff, work permits. We went from 4,000 permits a year to 8,000 permits a year. The work didn't increase. We started arresting people. Tom went to court on a routine basis, what, once a month? For quite a while?
Sometimes busier months than that.
We went from 4,000 permits to 8,000 permits just by working with the police and training them on what was going on out there. We had a tremendous problem with utilities. Then we rewrote the whole process of how to backfill that hole and how to fix that hole. I think at the end of your program you have Fritz Smith from Decker Construction. Hopefully Fritz will go through that. If you have any problems with that, Paul, if you haven't seen it, contact Doug or get hold of somebody in the city. They have a fabulous program of utility cuts. Because how the utility cuts look at the roadway, as far as they're concerned, it's just a hard surface access road to their utility. Their purpose of the water line breaks, they're geared towards fixing the water line. That's what their life is based on. They do a good job of it. From there above, they can care less. We had major, major problems in the city of Columbus. I think we've addressed it drastically. They use a flash fill, which is a controlled density fill, and a heat welding method. We can do that. Sometimes you can't, depending where you're at. But they can be a major problem. And I said I can emphasize enough, look at the city of Columbus. Real quick, the reason I get real quick here, because it was 11:30 last night, I was just getting damn tired. That's all there was to it. So I got a few things real quick. Thin asphalt overlays. We doing the cutouts in advance, just so I want to talk some preventive maintenance. Like I said, our average condition rating is 80 when we overlay the streets. When Tom first went out and looked at the streets with the city of Columbus, I wish I could take Doug out and show him the streets that we pave. He'd laugh so hard, tears would be rolling down his eyes. Because we have a fairly active preventive maintenance program. I think that's why they have that high rating. Seriously, when I say we don't have any potholes, we have very, very few. I mean, I don't think we have any. But typically on our overlays, when we say an 1.25 inches, that's a lie. We scratch every single street, and we do the 1.25 inch overlays. So we're probably 2.5 inches thick on our overlays. Because sometimes I see these scratch courses. If you do a scratch course right, you go out there and see the crushed stone and everything. I don't see any crushed stone. I think we're putting it down a little bit thicker, but it's paying off for us. Slurry seal, another product we use based on our township streets. Oh, real quick, for our townships, I don't know how the other townships, but we have our pavement management program. We include all the townships. We provide that free to them. So we rate all their streets too if they want to, and we provide that information to them on a yearly basis. Huh?
Can you come up to Akron and do that?
I can't beat your consultants' prices. That's just, if you haven't seen the slurry seal, I'm sure Bruce is going to get in that in great detail later. But we use, for the hot mix, Ryomac. Oh, I have pictures of Ryomac, but our contractor's so far behind I couldn't get you any pictures of it. Slurry seal. But they all have their purposes. They all have their uses. Ryomac, in terms of skid resistance, is absolutely fabulous. We have a place in Franklin County. It's real steep. Got a double threat. It's a real steep grade, and at the bottom of the grade is a 90-degree curve. And we had, I don't know, we were averaging, 15, 20 accidents a year. Most of them were wet weather. We Ryomacked it, and they dropped down to 2 or 3. We saw them going back up. We Ryomacked it again, they dropped back down. So it's excellent in terms of skidding if you got a problem. We used it on that bridge deck where we overlaid it with all the crack sealing. So that was real quick, because I know it's lunchtime, so I don't want to hold you guys up too much. Any questions or?
Gary, if they want to adapt any of the policies, procedures that you've used, such as the Big Rock method.
You like the Big Rock method? Yeah.
They need to get your permission and then put your name on it.
On the Big Rock?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be really nice.
Yeah.
Keep my name off the Big Rock. Okay? I think everybody's hungry, Joe.
I think so. Any questions for Gary? Somebody has to ask a question. You can't have lunch till somebody asks a question.
Hey, Eric, I thought you did great on the question, which is best, concrete pavement or asphalt pavement? I know you're standing here going, oh, man, why did he ask me that question? Right? Anything but that question. You did excellent, though. You did excellent.